A Werewolf Shifter Romance, written by Amelia Hart. Chapter 1. The Night Winterstone Fell. The sound of laughter carried on the evening air, slipping between the ancient pines and the crisp stones marking the border of Winterstone, a pack forged by tradition and frost. Cassandra stood near the fire pit, her eyes on the flickering flames, the crisp scent of wood smoke mingling with the familiar aroma of earth and pine. At 31, she wore years of wisdom etched across a determined brow, the silver streaks in her dark hair marking the passage of loss and triumph. Tonight, as always, she orbited on the edge of power. Wife of an alpha, always a backbone, rarely the voice. But nothing about this night felt safe. A hush rippled through the ranks as her mate, Julian, strode beside the beta, Elric. Voices low and weighty. Even in celebration, unease lingered. Neighboring packs had been restless, and Frostfall had prowled their boundaries in recent weeks. Cassandra's instincts pricked, a wary sense, too often ignored in these halls ruled by tradition. Across the fire, young wolves sparred, oblivious to the tension. Cassandra glanced at her daughter, Mira, 16 and eager, eyes bright with the promise of youth. Eliana, the ancient seer, passed behind Cassandra, offering muttered blessings for protection. Cassandra clutched her pendant, feeling the weight of inherited duty and the chill of something unseen approaching. The celebration shattered in an instant. A howl rent the silence, the warning call of attack. Shadows surged from the tree line, cloaked figures breaching the camp with brutal efficiency. Cassandra saw Julian turn, eyes burning with the power of his station, but the arrows flew swift and merciless. Wolves scrambled, yelps echoed. The sickening thud of bodies hitting earth sounded again and again. Cassandra ran toward her mate, the instinct supreme, desperate to shield and defend. But a figure blocked her. Masked, armed, quick. She grappled, claws extended, teeth bared in silent defiance. But the invaders had come for blood, not prisoners. The battle was chaos, every instinct fighting for survival, every training drilled into her bones rising to meet the brutal reality. She saw Elric fall, the beta's eyes wide with shock as the life drained away. Julian, too, faltered, falling under the weight of fatal wounds. Cassandra reached him only as the final breath escaped. His hand squeezed hers once, a silent plea, a transfer of power. Despair threatened to crush her, but somewhere deeper, something else reared, an unyielding refusal to let Winterstone perish. When the last arrow was loosed and the last rogue escaped into the woods, Cassandra stumbled to her knees beside Julian and Elric, surrounded by carnage. The moon hung unforgiving and cold overhead, silvering the blood and tears. The pack gathered in shock, young wolves clutching one another, elders growling in primal fear. Mira was sobbing against Cassandra's shoulder, her own world ruptured by the violence. Eliana knelt beside Cassandra, her voice low but commanding. "You must stand. Winterstone cannot fracture." The first challenge rose from the Ancien Darius, his voice echoing harsh. "A woman cannot take the mantle. Disaster will swallow us whole if tradition breaks." Harsh words met raw grief. Cassandra struggled to summon composure, but inside something shifted. She met Darius's glare and stood, her voice steel. "I am Alpha now. By bond, by blood, and by need." Skepticism rippled across the gathering. Others joined Darius. Old wolves, snarling, clutching ancient codes. "Our enemies will see weakness. Frostfall will strike again," muttered Lydia, matriarch of the Eastern line. Cassandra did not falter. She called the pack to order, demanded respect for the dead, rallied even those who doubted. As daylight broke over a ruined camp, she walked the perimeter, cataloging the loss. 6 gone, many wounded, all shaken. Her own brother limped beside her, murmuring support. Mira, though shattered, clung close, made strong by her mother's resolve. Eliana warned, "There is blood in the wind, and tradition will not protect you, Cassandra." The elders convened, some demanding exile, others asserting that Cassandra's leadership would bring ruin by angering the spirits. She listened, jaw set. Each opposition, each venomous word, hardened her resolve. In her quarters that night, Cassandra washed the blood from her hands, staring into the tarnished mirror. She saw the woman who had kept her pack alive, who had loved, lost, and endured. Her heartbeat was steady, her memories raw. She was not her mate, nor her father, but the world had changed, and she would not let Winterstone fall. The moon rose higher. Outside, Mira slept at the foot of the bed, restless. Eliana kept vigil by the window, eyes on the forest. Cassandra wrote the names of the fallen, promising herself justice. Dawn crept quietly, and with it, new burdens. Cassandra walked out among her wolves, meeting every face, shoring up defenses, sending scouts to the Frostfall border. Rumors swirled. The attackers had wolf scent, but bore no known marks. Evidence remained elusive, stoking confusion and fear. She called a council before the ancient stone. Voices clamored for vengeance, for revenge, some for surrender, some for tradition. Cassandra bore the weight, refusing passivity. Our dead cry for justice. Our living demand strength. I will lead, and any wolf who defies me can challenge on sacred ground. Darius tried. His challenge was brief and futile. Cassandra bested him not only in physical prowess, but in the clarity of her conviction. No blood need spill. The pack watched, some outside the ring, uncertain but fearful, others whispering of the omen. A woman alpha, a new path. Cassandra bent over Julian's grave that evening, her soul torn. She promised him the pack would endure, and that vengeance would not blind justice. Night returned, and Winterstone breathed in new uncertainty. Cassandra ordered healing circles. Patrols doubled. Eliana dreamed of omens, smoke, and shadow. Mira wouldn't sleep. In private, Cassandra wept, but each tear kindled resolve. The days stretched in tense uncertainty. Darius and the other elders convened, plotting quietly. Tensions rose, food stores raided in the night, suspicious tracks near the Frostfall line. Cassandra marshaled her young, kept a keen watch, and sought truth beyond tradition. With every passing day, the burden grew, but so did the power within her. Winterstone stood, shaken but defiant, its future now gripped by the hands of a woman who would not yield. At the threshold of change, Cassandra gazed at the moon and swore. Winterstone would not only survive, it would transcend. Chapter 2: Ashes of Doubt. Winterstone carried the weight of a broken legacy. The wound of recent loss gnawed at the edges of every moment. Howls softer, laughter rare. And Cassandra, alpha by circumstance and conviction, stood at the heart of this turbulence. The moon waxed and waned, marking her first week of rule. Grief remained, but time pressed relentless, demanding action. In the dawn light, Cassandra surveyed the battered compound. Her age, a solemn 31, earned her neither reverence nor pity. Lines deepened as she negotiated with the elders. Darius, Lydia, and Aubrey, all fixed on the traditions that defined Winterstone. Their silent protests spoke volumes. Cassandra chose to let actions guide her words. She summoned her pack's young. Mira, her daughter, attended every meeting with fierce intensity. Rowan, one of the hopefuls barely 20, shared whispered encouragement, offering advice with respect and awe. These wolves, even those unsure, felt the electric pull of change. But change bred unrest. Darius entered Cassandra's modest quarters one morning, fingers curled tight, brow furrowed. "The council has met," he informed. "The spirits are restless. Lydia fears your refusal of the bonding ritual will doom us all." Cassandra replied coolly, "Tradition cannot shield us now. We must be stronger than fear." Across the territory, sabotage began to manifest. Rations went missing. 2 sentries turned up injured, claiming shadows darted at the border. Rumors twisted through the dens. Some said Frostfall had already struck again. Others whispered of betrayal within. Cassandra ordered double patrols, focusing on the east where the woods thickened and ancient stones glimmered like eyes. At midday, she gathered the young warriors. "You must be vigilant. We defend our own, but do not seek revenge blindly. Truth must guide us." Rowan asked hesitantly, "Will you call for vengeance?" Cassandra's answer was clear. Justice, not blind violence. Rage cannot clear these shadows. As she led a patrol, Cassandra's mind pressed back against memory, Julian's laughter, Mira's birth, the dreams she'd woven for the pack. Every step was a reckoning, each choice a potential seed for destruction or survival. Her pain anchored her, but leadership demanded more than sorrow. She pressed on. Eliana the seer called her to the old shrine. The stones there pulsed with a strange energy. Eliana laid her hands on Cassandra's. You must endure, Alpha. Spirits test you, but destiny is woven from will, not tradition. Rumors grew as new wolves defected from patrol, claiming Cassandra's methods courted disaster. Aubrey, more moderate than Darius, met with Cassandra alone. Some claim you incite chaos, that the dead cannot rest. Yet I see strength. Cassandra bit her lip. If unity is chaos, then perhaps they fear change more than fate itself. Inside her mind, Cassandra catalogued each risk. The restless wolves, the hidden threat, and the possibility of war with Frostfall. Her instincts point toward something deliberate. Patterns in the missing food, tracks that didn't match any Winterstone wolf, and the subtle interferences with border patrol schedules. One evening, Mira drew sketches by firelight, lines twisting into snarls. Cassandra sat beside her, brushing dark hair behind her ear. You are strong, Mother. Stronger than you realize. Cassandra pressed a kiss to Mira's forehead. Strength must serve the pack, not only our grief. In the communal den, tension erupted. Rowan stood against an elder, defending Cassandra's command. Lydia warned, we cannot bend the natural order. A woman alpha offends the primal balance. Anger sparked as young wolves rose, defending Cassandra. She diffused the moment, calm, but resolved. We bend because the wind does not ask. We endure because those before us endured. I am what fate forged, not what it demanded. Privately, Cassandra recalled her mate Julian's counsel. Lead, not by word, but by act. She placed this advice at her core, moving with purpose, never shrinking before challenge. She investigated further, collecting details from witnesses, patterns in the attacker's fur, glimpses of green eyes, strange scents, hints of frostfall, but not enough for certainty. Eliana shared a vision. I see ash and frost entwined. The border blurs, and a foe stirs within shadows. Cassandra refused to be paralyzed by omens. She tasked Rowan with organizing watch teams. Mira committed herself to healing the wounded. Unity formed in these cracks, subtle but real, but cracks widened. Darius convened his followers in secret, plotting a challenge, speaking of exile and curses. The ancient scripts, written long before Cassandra's birth, rarely mentioned change, only certainty and fear. The revelation fell heavy on her shoulders. Winterstone's future would be shaped not by edicts, but by determination. One morning, a pack scout returned with a bloodied paw, having barely escaped a trap at the Frostfall border. The implements were unfamiliar, complex, cruel, more than what most packs wielded. Cassandra interrogated the young wolf. The description of a masked figure, eyes cold, lingered. A warning. Cassandra mapped the incidents with Mira, finding cunning design rather than mere chance. Someone wants us divided, afraid, she murmured. Mira's gaze was fierce, restless. Then we unite, or we fall apart. Food shortages pressed hard. Rowan organized hunting teams. Cassandra joined, demonstrating skill and grit, never asking of her wolves what she would not do herself. She helped heal the fallen, binding wounds with her own hands, forging bonds deeper than blood. Lydia, Aubrey, Darius, all challenged her at council. Time dishonors the pack, Darius growled. Cassandra replied, honor comes from survival, not from the rights of ancestors. Tell me, who among you can promise our future? That evening she spoke before Winterstone as thunder rolled overhead. We are the children of ice and sorrow, but we are more than the past. I will not ask you to trust tradition alone. Trust the blood we share. Trust the conviction you see. The pack was divided. Darius plotted a formal challenge. Lydia, though uncertain, saw Cassandra's resolve, and grew silent. Aubrey weighed each word, searching for compromise. Cassandra spent private nights pacing the border, listening to the hush of woods and the distant whispers of frostfall. Each night she foresaw confrontation. Each day she prepared, never bending. Her brother, fallen but not broken, murmured, "You have always been leader, Cassandra. Now you must endure." Mira added, "Even if it means defying everyone who claims love for us." The moon completed its cycle, lighting wounds and tributes etched in stone. The pack, fractured, held on, some bound by certainty, others by hope. As a storm rose on the horizon, Cassandra looked to the trees, her resolve a quiet fire. Winters could be cruel, but she was the flame that would resist decay. Winterstone waited, hope flickering in the dark, for its fate to be tested, its alpha to write a new story against the tide of tradition. Chapter 3. Frostfall's Shadow. Days blurred into one another, steely gray and chill, as Cassandra led Winterstone with increasing certainty. Though grief lingered, so did questions. Tracks on the eastern border grew fresher, and the eastern woods, where Frostfall held dominion, whispered of impending storms. Cassandra could sense change, a pulse in the wind, eyes watching from the deep forest, her own instincts taut as bowstrings. It was Mira who first noticed the gathering at the border. Scouting at dawn, with Rowan and 2 others, the young wolves froze as a group of Frostfall shifters emerged from the mist, their forms tall and imposing. They did not cross fully, but their presence was deliberate. An invitation or a warning, Cassandra could not yet decide. She called council before the boundary stones. Lydia and Darius, accompanied by Aubrey and young Rowan, assembled warily under her lead. "They want us to come to the table," Rowan murmured. Cassandra nodded, voice measured. "We meet them as equals. No fear, no vengeance." Cassandra led a delegation to the clearing between packs. The morning was frigid, the grass slick with dew, mist trailing through ancient trunks. Approaching the Frostfall group, she recognized their alpha instantly. Nikolai stood forward, broad-shouldered, charcoal-haired, eyes dark as storm clouds, commanding respect. At 35, he radiated confidence and a raw edge of danger, his beta, Gage, trailing like a shadow. Nikolai's words were clipped and formal. "Winterstone, you mourn. We acknowledge your loss, but the border is not a battleground for grief. We offer diplomacy." Cassandra unclenched her fists. "Diplomacy after blood? Your wolves crossed our boundary, your scent on the wind." Gage's lips curled, but Nikolai shot him a look sharp as frost. "We lost none that night. I mourn your dead, but Frostfall did not order it." The discussion that followed was tense, brittle, truth and lies tangled in polite phrases. Cassandra did not flinch, holding Nikolai's gaze with her own. Mira watched from behind her, Rowan sharing a sidelong glance with the youngest Frostfall werewolf. Steely tension underpinned every remark. The past could not be erased. Frostfall's pack members stood quietly, their posture respectful. But Gage was restless, repeatedly redirecting the conversation toward Winterstone's supposed weaknesses, hinting at instability under Cassandra's rule. Eliana waited at the tree line, taking in every nuance, every movement. When Nikolai suggested a second meeting, diplomacy cannot be resolved in a single dawn. Cassandra agreed, but only on neutral ground. Night fell heavy as the packs retreated. In the Winterstone den, elders debated Nikolai's sincerity. Darius scoffed at the notion of peace. "Their alpha is sharp. That beta Gage has eyes like daggers. Trust neither." Cassandra pushed back. "Trust is earned and watched. War will destroy us faster than pride." Meanwhile, the patrols noted movement. Stray wolves, white fur glinting beside darker forms, skirting the edges but never crossing. Cassandra spent hours mapping the incidents, patterns slowly emerging. Frostfall's wolves moved with precision, but the scent at each intrusion was inconclusive, almost as though someone was covering their tracks. In private, Mira challenged her mother. Why listen to Nikolai? Why not demand proof? Cassandra responded softly. Proof is not always given. Sometimes, we must take it. The second meeting came at dusk, with both delegations sharing tense silence beneath the old oaks. Nikolai's presence felt, for Cassandra at least, a strange blend of threat and familiarity. He listened more than he spoke, offering diplomatic overtures but never illusions of weakness. Gage flitted in and out of the conversation, sharp hints, half angry, half calculating. At one moment, word about the border attack surfaced, Gage subtly directing blame toward Winter or rogue outsiders. Cassandra watched him, noting every twitch, every sideways comment. Nikolai watched too, his jaw set, dark eyes lingering on Cassandra when discussions grew heated. When Nikolai stepped aside with Cassandra, away from Gage and the pack, he dropped formality for a moment. "You're not what they expected," he said quietly, almost with reluctant admiration. Cassandra's reply, "Neither were you." For a brief instant, a truce flickered. Two leaders cut from different kinds of steel, neither willing to bend, both unwilling to let blind tradition dictate futures. Back at Winterstone, Lydia whispered, "Do you trust him?" Cassandra shook her head. "No, but I don't trust our own certainty either." That night, under moonlight, Cassandra shifted, her wolf form lithe and dark, senses sharpened. She prowled the borders herself, scanning for clues. Every crackle, every scent, heightened by grief and responsibility. In Frostfall, Nikolai sat by his own fire, troubled, seers warning him of coming unrest. A third encounter arose. Frostfall's Alpha and Beta crossed to parley over stolen rations. Nikolai pushed diplomacy. Gage pressed for territorial boundaries, more aggressive. Cassandra countered, "Justice is not drawn in chalk." As discussions frayed, the younger wolves from both packs found common ground, a shared hunt, the exchange of stories of lost kin. Cassandra watched, sensing possibility hidden beneath war-taught hostility. After negotiations, Rowan approached. Gage tests the borders himself at night. "He taunts us." Cassandra made note, adding layers to her growing suspicion. As days passed, evidence built. Times when Gage was absent, shadows crossing at precisely the right moments, tracks that matched no ordinary wolf. Yet nothing was certain. No direct confession, no obvious smoking gun. Cassandra saw how Frostfall's Alpha kept his pack tight, never yielding to Gage's subtle pressure. Still, the political game grew sharper. Nikolai invited Cassandra to another meeting, this one deeper in the woods, away from prying eyes. Tension shimmered between them. Respect, rivalry, and something charged, barely nameable. They discussed the burden of leadership, pain of loss, the cost of war, each listening more deeply than their packs could ever suspect. She asked, "Do you believe in redemption, Nikolai?" He answered, "I believe in action. Words aren't enough." In the gathering dusk, as they parted ways, Cassandra felt the world shift. The lines between enemy and ally blurred, and somewhere, in the hush between heartbeats, possibility took root. Winterstone returned home, uncertain but not broken. Cassandra walked the den, greeted every wolf, reaffirmed her promise to protect, to lead with action, not mere tradition. The restlessness in Frostfall echoed her own. Nikolai now suspected internal friction was threatening his command. Eliana warned, "Shadows move against us all. The outcome will depend on truth, not prophecy." As another dawn rose, Cassandra met Mira by the ancient stone, holding both hope and dread. She whispered to her daughter, "Change is not safety, but it can be strength." For Winterstone and Frostfall, the dance of diplomacy was just beginning, unsteady, fraught, and vital. In the silent woods where moonlight trembled and secrets waited, Cassandra stood ready, her heart a crucible of grief, fire, and iron. Chapter 4. The Bond Awakens. The autumn moon hung heavy over the sacred grove, neutral ground where neither Winterstone nor Frostfall held dominance. Ancient stones, worn smooth by centuries of wind and rain, formed a circle beneath towering oaks whose branches intertwined like clasped hands. Tonight, these stones would witness a ritual older than memory, the conciliation of rivals, a formal ceremony designed to prevent war between neighboring packs. Cassandra arrived first, flanked by Mira and Rowan. At 31, she moved with the careful grace of someone who had learned to command respect through action rather than birthright. Her dark hair was braided with silver threads, a mourning tradition, and her eyes held the weight of recent loss. Behind her, Eliana carried the ceremonial torch, its flame dancing in the cool evening air. Nikolai emerged from the opposite tree line moments later, his presence immediately filling the sacred space. At 35, the Frostfall Alpha commanded attention without effort. Broad shoulders, storm-dark eyes, and an aura of controlled power that made even the ancient trees seem to lean toward him. Gage followed close behind, his pale eyes scanning the gathering with calculating intensity. The ritual began as tradition demanded. Both alphas approached the center stone, placing their hands upon its weathered surface. The pack elders formed outer circles, their voices rising in the old chants, words in a language that predated human memory. Steam rose from the ceremonial braziers, filling the air with the scent of burning sage and pine. Cassandra felt the power building, not just the formal magic of the ceremony, but something deeper, wilder. Her wolf stirred restlessly beneath her skin, responding to forces she didn't understand. Across the stone, Nikolai's jaw was set, his breathing controlled, but she caught the slight tension in his shoulders, the way his fingers pressed harder against the stone. The chanting reached its crescendo. Light began to emanate from the ancient stone itself, pulsing with each heartbeat, each breath. The ritual demanded honesty, truth laid bare before the moon and witnesses. It was meant to reveal deception, to force acknowledgement of wrongs. "I swear by moon and stone," Nikolai's voice carried clearly through the grove, "that Frostfall seeks no war with Winterstone. We mourn your dead as our own kin." Cassandra met his gaze directly. "I swear by moon and stone that Winterstone desires justice, not blind vengeance. We seek truth above satisfaction." The light from the stone pulsed brighter, and suddenly the world tilted. Power crashed through Cassandra like lightning, not the gentle magic of the ceremony, but something primal, undeniable. Her wolf howled within her, recognizing something that her human mind refused to accept. Mate. The word echoed through her bones, through her blood, through every fiber of her being. Across the stone, Nikolai's eyes went wide, his carefully controlled expression cracking. She felt his shock through a connection she hadn't known existed, tasted his confusion and denial. No, this couldn't be happening. Not now. Not with him. The ceremonial light flared impossibly bright, and suddenly everyone could feel it. The mate bond snapping into place like a chain forged in starfire. Gasps echoed around the circle. Gage stepped forward, his face twisted with something that might have been rage or hunger. "Impossible," Darius breathed from behind Cassandra. "The spirits mock us." Cassandra fought against the pull, the overwhelming need to touch Nikolai, to close the distance between them. Her dead mate Julian's face flashed through her mind, his gentle smile, his steadfast loyalty, the life they'd built together. This felt like betrayal, like some cosmic joke at her expense, but the bond wouldn't be denied. She could feel Nikolai's presence as clearly as her own heartbeat, could sense his inner wolf pacing, agitated by the unexpected connection. His scent, pine and storm wind and something uniquely him, called to her in ways that terrified her. "The ritual is corrupted," Gage snarled, his voice cutting through the stunned silence. "This cannot stand. The moon has been deceived." Before anyone could respond, a new sound shattered the night. Howls, multiple voices raised in warning. Attack calls, coming from both territories. The ceremony dissolved into chaos as wolves began shifting, preparing for battle. Cassandra's transformation came swift and instinctive. Her human form melted away as muscle and bone reformed, dark fur sprouting along her lengthening limbs. Her wolf was larger than most females, built for battle rather than delicate grace. Beside her, Nikolai shifted as well, his wolf form massive silver-black fur gleaming in the moonlight, every line of him screaming dominance and power. Rogues poured from the forest, not the organized attackers who had murdered Julian and Elric, but desperate, savage wolves with foam on their muzzles and madness in their eyes. They fell upon the ceremony without discrimination, seeking only to kill and destroy. The mate bond flared as Cassandra and Nikolai moved in perfect synchronization, their wolves recognizing the partnership even as their human minds reeled. They fought back to back, each protecting the other's blind spots without conscious thought. Cassandra's smaller form darted between enemies, her jaws finding throats with surgical precision, while Nikolai's massive wolf crushed attackers with brute strength. Gage was fighting too, but Cassandra noticed how he stayed close to the edges, how his attacks seemed almost reluctant. When a rogue broke through their lines and lunged for Mira, it was Nikolai who intercepted it, his jaws crushing the attacker's spine with one decisive snap. The battle ended as suddenly as it had begun. The surviving rogues melted back into the forest, leaving behind only bodies and blood-soaked earth. In the aftermath, as both packs began to shift back to human form, the weight of what had happened settled over them like a shroud. Cassandra stood naked in the moonlight, her skin marked with scratches and blood, her chest heaving from exertion and shock. Nikolai was beside her, equally bare, his dark eyes fixed on her face with an intensity that made her shiver. "This changes nothing," she whispered, her voice barely audible. His response was equally quiet. "Everything has changed." Around them, both packs watched in stunned silence. The mate bond hung between them like a visible thing, impossible to deny or ignore. Darius looked as though he might collapse from the shock, while Gage's pale eyes darted between Cassandra and Nikolai with barely concealed fury. Eliana approached carefully, her ancient eyes bright with something that might have been satisfaction. "The moon has spoken," she said simply. "Who are we to argue with destiny?" But Cassandra shook her head, reaching for the cloak Mira offered her. "Destiny doesn't excuse murder. The bond doesn't erase the blood between our packs." Nikolai's wolf had protected her, had fought beside her with instinctive partnership, but he was still the alpha of the pack that stood accused of killing her mate. The contradiction threatened to tear her apart. "We need to talk," Nikolai said, his voice rough with emotion and exhaustion. "There's nothing to discuss," Cassandra replied, but even she could hear the lie in her words. The bond pulsed between them, a living thing that demanded acknowledgement. Every instinct screamed at her to go to him, to accept what the moon had decreed. But Julian's memory held her back, along with the weight of leadership and the expectations of her pack. As both groups began the long journey back to their territories, Cassandra found herself walking beside Nikolai despite her better judgment. The bond made separation physically painful, like trying to breathe with only half her lungs. "I felt your wolf," she said quietly. "During the fight. She knew me. As mine knew yours," he admitted. "This complicates everything." Behind them, Gage walked alone, his expression unreadable in the moonlight. Cassandra caught him watching them, something cold and calculating in his pale gaze. Another piece of the puzzle, she thought, filing the observation away. The mate bond was real, undeniable, and potentially catastrophic for both packs. As Cassandra reached the Winterstone border, she could feel Nikolai's reluctance to let her go, could sense his wolf's distress at the increasing distance between them. This was only the beginning, she realized. The moon had bound them together, but trust would have to be earned step by step. Truth by painful truth. Chapter 5. Shadows and Evidence. The mate bond was a living thing that clawed at Cassandra's consciousness with each passing hour. 3 days had elapsed since the ritual, and the distance from Nikolai felt like a wound that wouldn't heal. Her wolf paced restlessly beneath her skin, whining for reunion, while her human mind fought against the pull with every ounce of will she possessed. Winterstone buzzed with tension and whispered conversations. The elders met in constant council, their voices carrying through the stone corridors like the buzz of angry wasps. Darius had grown bolder in his opposition, claiming the bond was unnatural, a corruption of sacred law. Lydia, ever pragmatic, wondered aloud whether the connection could be severed through ritual or exile. "The spirits test us," Aubrey murmured during one particularly heated discussion. "Perhaps this is meant to unite our packs against a greater threat." Cassandra barely listened to their debates. Her focus had sharpened to a razor's edge, concentrated on the investigation she'd been conducting in secret. The attack during the ceremony had provided new evidence. Tracks, scents, patterns of movement that didn't match the chaotic assault they'd witnessed. In her private chambers, she spread out maps and witness statements like a general planning a campaign. Mira sat beside her, now 17 and grown fierce in the wake of recent events. Rowan contributed his own observations, his young face grave with purpose. "The rogues came from 3 directions," Rowan reported, pointing to markings on the map. "But look at these tracks here. They're too organized, too deliberate for mad wolves." Mira leaned forward, her finger tracing a pattern. "And they avoided certain areas entirely, almost like they knew where our sentries would be positioned." Cassandra nodded grimly. The attack had been orchestrated, designed to look like random violence while serving a deeper purpose. But who would benefit from chaos during the conciliation ceremony? Who stood to gain from war between Winterstone and Frostfall? The answer crystallized slowly, piece by painful piece. Gage's behavior during the ceremony haunted her, his reluctance to engage, his positioning at the edges of combat, the calculating look in his pale eyes as he watched the mate bond manifest. A beta with ambition could manipulate conflict to his advantage, could use war to weaken his alpha and seize power. But suspicion wasn't proof. Cassandra needed evidence, concrete facts that would stand up to scrutiny. She began reaching out through old networks, wolves who owed favors, traders who traveled between territories, scouts who saw things others missed. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Elena, a former Winterstone wolf who had made it into a neutral pack, sent word through carefully hidden channels. She'd witnessed strange meetings in the borderlands. Frostfall wolves meeting with rogues, coins changing hands, whispered conversations about timing and territory. Gage was there, Elena's message revealed, leading the discussions, making promises about Frostfall's future leadership. Cassandra's hands trembled as she read the report. The pieces were falling into place, but she needed more. She needed Nikolai's cooperation, and that meant confronting the bond she'd been fighting. The mate connection made secret meetings inevitable. They arranged to meet at dawn in a grove halfway between territories, away from prying eyes and listening ears. When Cassandra arrived, Nikolai was already waiting, his broad frame tense with barely contained energy. The moment she saw him, the bond sang with relief and desire. Her wolf wanted to run to him, to press close and share scent and warmth. Instead, she forced herself to maintain distance, focusing on the investigation rather than the impossible pull between them. "You feel it too," Nikolai said without preamble. His voice was rough, strained with the effort of fighting their connection. "I feel it," she admitted. "But feeling isn't accepting. We have larger problems than the moon's meddling." She shared Elena's intelligence, watching Nikolai's expression grow darker with each detail. When she mentioned Gage's involvement, his jaw clenched so hard she could hear his teeth grinding. "I've had my own suspicions," he admitted reluctantly. "Gage has been ambitious lately, questioning my decisions, suggesting alternative approaches to leadership. The attack on my mate and Beta," Cassandra pressed, her heart aching at the memory. Could Gage have orchestrated it? Nikolai was quiet for a long moment, his storm-dark eyes fixed on the horizon. He had the opportunity. "I sent him to patrol the eastern borders that night. He returned late, claimed he'd encountered rogues. The implications hung between them like a poisonous cloud. If Gage was responsible for Julian's murder, then Nikolai's pack, however unwittingly, had harbored her mate's killer. The bond demanded forgiveness, understanding, unity. But justice demanded something else entirely. "Help me prove it," Cassandra said quietly. "Help me find the truth, whatever it costs." Their investigation began in earnest that day. Using the bond to coordinate secretly, they began gathering evidence through their respective networks. Nikolai questioned his own pack members with surgical precision, looking for inconsistencies in Gage's alibis. Cassandra reached out to every contact she'd cultivated over years of diplomacy and trade. The mate bond proved unexpectedly useful for covert communication. They could sense each other's emotional states across vast distances, could coordinate meetings through subtle shifts in mood and feeling. When Cassandra discovered a cache of Frostfall weapons hidden near Winterstone territory, Nikolai felt her triumph and alarm simultaneously. But the bond also made everything more complicated. Each secret meeting brought them closer together, made fighting the connection more difficult. When Nikolai's wolf emerged during one late-night planning session, drawn by the scent of Cassandra's distress over a particularly brutal witness account, she found herself reaching out to touch his silver-black fur before common sense reasserted itself. "We can't," she whispered, pulling her hand back. "Not while this lies between us." His wolf whined softly, a sound of heartbreak that made her own wolf howl in response. The mate bond wasn't just about desire or convenience. It was about recognition, about two souls finding their perfect complement. But how could she accept that complement when it came wrapped in so much pain and betrayal? Meanwhile, evidence mounted against Gage. Witnesses came forward, speaking of secret meetings and whispered promises. A rogue captured during a border skirmish admitted to taking silver from a pale-eyed Frostfall beta in exchange for creating chaos along the territorial boundaries. Most damning of all was the discovery of correspondence. Coded messages between Gage and rogue leaders, detailing plans to eliminate both alphas and claim control of the northern territories. The handwriting was unmistakably his, confirmed by wolves who'd worked closely with him for years. But as the evidence accumulated, so did the danger. Gage began to suspect their investigation, his paranoia growing as Nikolai asked increasingly pointed questions. He started gathering allies within Frostfall, wolves who shared his traditional views about female leadership and territorial expansion. The crisis came to a head when one of Cassandra's informants was found dead, his body dumped at the Winterstone border with clear signs of torture. The message was unmistakable: stop digging or face consequences. That night, the bond between Cassandra and Nikolai flared with shared rage and determination. They met in their secret grove, both trembling with fury and the need for action. "He knows," Nikolai said simply. "Gage knows we're closing in." "Then we end this," Cassandra replied, her voice deadly quiet. "Before he can kill anyone else." They planned their confrontation carefully, knowing they'd have only one chance. Gage was clever, connected, dangerous. If they moved against him without absolute proof, he could turn their own packs against them. But if they waited too long, more innocent wolves would die. The mate bond pulsed between them as they prepared for battle, not against each other this time, but side by side against a common enemy. For the first time since the ceremony, Cassandra allowed herself to hope that maybe, just maybe, the moon had known what it was doing. But first, they had to survive what was coming. And Gage, they were about to learn, had no intention of going quietly into exile or death. As dawn approached, both alphas prepared to return to their territories, knowing that the next time they met, it would be to expose a traitor and face the consequences of truth. The investigation was complete. The evidence was damning. Now came the hardest part, convincing their packs to believe them and surviving Gage's inevitable retaliation. Chapter 6. Treason. The evidence lay spread across Nikolai's war table like pieces of a blood-soaked puzzle. Coded letters, witness testimonies, weapon fragments, all pointing to one undeniable truth. His trusted beta, the wolf he'd known since childhood, had orchestrated the massacre that started this entire conflict. The betrayal cut deeper than any physical wound. Gage entered the chamber with his usual confident stride, pale eyes scanning the assembled materials before settling on Nikolai's face. For just a moment, something flickered in his expression. Surprise, calculation, then the familiar mask of loyalty sliding back into place. "You summoned me, Alpha?" Gage's voice carried its usual deference, but Nikolai could hear the tension underneath. "Sit," Nikolai commanded, his tone deliberately neutral. The mate bond hummed at the edge of his consciousness, Cassandra's presence a distant but comforting anchor. She was conducting her own confrontation at Winterstone, presenting evidence to her pack council while he dealt with the traitor in their midst. Gage remained standing, his posture shifting subtly from respectful to defensive. "Is there some urgent pack business?" The border patrols can wait." Nikolai lifted one of the coded letters, its wax seal already broken. "Tell me about your correspondence with the rogue packs, Gage." The silence that followed was deafening. Gage's face went through a series of micro-expressions: denial, anger, fear, then something cold and calculating that Nikolai had never seen before. When his beta finally spoke, the subservient tone had vanished entirely. "How long have you known?" Gage asked quietly. "Long enough." Nikolai stood slowly, letting his alpha presence fill the room. "Long enough to understand the scope of your ambition, the murder of Winterstone's alpha and beta, the orchestrated attacks to destabilize both packs, the rogues you paid to assault the conciliation ceremony." Gage laughed, a sound devoid of humor. "You always were too soft, Nikolai. Too concerned with honor and tradition to see what needed to be done. What needed to be done." Nikolai's voice was deadly quiet. "You mean murdering innocent wolves? Starting a war? I mean securing our future." Gage snarled, his carefully maintained facade cracking completely. "Frostfall could rule the entire Northern Territory if we had strong leadership. But you're content to play diplomat while our enemies grow stronger." The admission hung in the air like a poison cloud. Nikolai felt rage building in his chest, his wolf clawing for release. But he forced himself to remain human, to think, rather than simply react. "So you decided to remove me," he said. "Use the war to eliminate both myself and Cassandra, then claim leadership of both packs." "It would have worked," Gage replied, his pale eyes glittering with frustrated ambition. "Should have worked. But then that damned mate bond manifested and everything became complicated." Nikolai's hands clenched into fists. Through the bond, he could feel Cassandra's own confrontation reaching its climax, her emotions a storm of vindication and fury. "You killed her mate. You orphaned her daughter. You destroyed families for your own ambition. I did what was necessary for the greater good," Gage shot back. "Winterstone needed strong leadership, and you were never going to provide it. A female alpha? The very idea is an abomination." The words triggered something primal in Nikolai's chest. His wolf surged forward, demanding violence, demanding blood for the insult to his mate. But before he could act, the chamber door burst open. 3 of Gage's allies entered. Wolves Nikolai had thought loyal to him, now clearly revealed as conspirators. Their presence changed everything, turning a confrontation into a potential battle. Nikolai's hand dropped to the silver blade at his hip, blessed weapons being one of the few things that could permanently harm a shifter. "Did you really think I'd come here defenseless?" Gage asked, his confidence returning. "You're not the only one who can plan, Nikolai. While you've been playing house with your Winterstone witch, I've been securing my power base." The fight erupted without warning. One of Gage's allies lunged forward, shifting mid-leap into a massive brown wolf. Nikolai met the attack with practiced precision, his own transformation seamless and deadly. His silver-black wolf was larger than any of his opponents, built for dominance rather than speed. But numbers mattered in close quarters. As Nikolai grappled with the brown wolf, the other 2 attackers closed in from his flanks. Claws raked across his ribs, drawing blood and sending pain shooting through his consciousness. Through the mate bond, he felt Cassandra's alarm. Her own battle beginning as Gage's conspiracy revealed itself at Winterstone as well. The knowledge that she was fighting for her life miles away gave him strength, fury transforming into focused purpose. He broke free from the brown wolf's grip, his jaws closing around its throat with crushing force. The crack of vertebrae echoed through the chamber, followed by the wet sound of tearing flesh. One enemy down, but Gage and his remaining allies were already shifting, preparing for a coordinated assault. Gage's wolf form was lean, but powerful, built for cunning, rather than brute strength. Scars marked his silver coat, evidence of battles fought in shadows and secret conflicts. His pale eyes gleamed with intelligence and malice as he circled Nikolai like a predator stalking wounded prey. The battle that followed was brutal and personal. These weren't rogues or strangers. They were wolves Nikolai had trained with, fought beside, trusted with his life. Now they tried to tear him apart with systematic precision, using knowledge of his fighting style against him. But Nikolai had advantages they hadn't counted on. The mate bond fed him strength and purpose, Cassandra's fierce determination flowing through their connection like liquid fire. When pain threatened to slow him, her resolve kept him moving. When exhaustion made his movements sluggish, her fury gave him renewed speed. He caught one attacker's leg between his jaws, twisting until bones snapped, and the wolf collapsed with a howl of agony. But the victory cost him. Gage's fangs found his shoulder, tearing through muscle and sinew. Blood flowed freely, staining the stone floor crimson. The chamber door burst open again, but this time it was Rowan and two loyal Frostfall warriors, drawn by the sounds of battle. The tide turned instantly as fresh fighters joined the fray, overwhelming Gage's remaining ally with coordinated attacks. Gage found himself alone, surrounded, bleeding from multiple wounds. His wolf form began to shift back to human, and Nikolai followed suit, both alphas facing each other in their natural forms despite their injuries. "It's over," Nikolai said, his voice rough with exhaustion and pain. "Surrender, and I'll grant you exile rather than execution." Gage's laugh was bitter, defiant. "You think this ends with me? I'm not the only one who sees the weakness in your leadership, Nikolai. Others will continue what I started. Then we'll deal with them as we've dealt with you," Nikolai replied. "But first, you'll answer for Julian's murder. Cassandra deserves that justice." Something shifted in Gage's expression. Desperation, perhaps, or the realization that his grand plans had crumbled to dust. "She'll never forgive what Frostfall did," he said quietly. "Your precious mate bond won't survive the truth." "The truth is that you acted alone," Nikolai said firmly. "You betrayed both packs for your own ambition. That's not on Frostfall. It's on you." Gage's response was to lunge forward, a hidden blade appearing in his hand as he aimed for Nikolai's heart. But the treacherous attack failed. Rowan's reflexes were faster, his own knife finding its mark in Gage's chest before the traitor could complete his strike. The former beta collapsed, blood frothing on his lips as he glared up at Nikolai with dying hatred. You'll never be strong enough," he gasped, then went still. In the sudden silence that followed, Nikolai felt the mate bond pulse with relief and grief. Cassandra's own battle had ended. Justice served, but at great cost. They had uncovered the truth, exposed the traitor, but the scars of betrayal would take time to heal. Through their connection, he sensed her approaching, drawn by the bond and the need to see the conspiracy's end with her own eyes. Soon they would face their packs together, reveal the full scope of Gage's treachery, and begin the difficult work of rebuilding trust. But first, they had to survive the political fallout of a public mate bond and the revelation that their enemy had been within their own ranks all along. Chapter 7. Trial by Fire. The great hall of Winterstone had never held such tension. Stone walls that had witnessed generations of pack meetings now trembled with the weight of revelations that threatened to shatter centuries of tradition. Cassandra stood before the assembled wolves. Her pack, Nikolai's pack, and neutral witnesses brought in to ensure justice, knowing that the next few hours would determine not just her fate, but the future of both territories. The evidence of Gage's betrayal lay spread across the ancient oak table, like accusations carved in blood. Coded letters, witness testimonies, the confession of a captured rogue, all pointing to a conspiracy that had cost Julian his life and nearly destroyed two proud packs. Yet even with proof laid bare, the divisions ran deeper than simple guilt or innocence. Darius stood among the Winterstone elders, his weathered face carved with disapproval. "The dead cry for vengeance," he proclaimed, his voice echoing off stone walls. "How can we trust any wolf of Frostfall when their beta orchestrated such treachery?" "Gage acted alone," Nikolai replied, his voice calm despite the tension radiating through the mate bond. "His ambition corrupted him, but it doesn't taint every wolf who served under him." "Doesn't it?" Lydia challenged, her sharp eyes fixed on Cassandra. "You ask us to accept not just forgiveness, but this unnatural bond. The spirits themselves seem to mock our loss." Cassandra felt the weight of every gaze, every whispered doubt, every fear that change would bring destruction. At 31, she had already buried one mate and fought for acceptance as alpha. Now the moon demanded she choose between justice and destiny, between the safety of tradition and the uncertain promise of something new. Mira stepped forward from among the younger wolves, her 17 years giving her a fierce clarity that age sometimes lacked. "The bond didn't kill my father," she said quietly, her words carrying despite their softness. "Gage's ambition did. The moon didn't betray us. One wolf did." "And what of the future?" Aubrey asked, her practical mind cutting to the heart of political reality. 2 pacts, 1 bond. How do we govern? How do we maintain independence while honoring what the spirits have decreed? Before Cassandra could answer, a commotion outside drew their attention. Shouts, the sound of running feet, the distinctive howl of wolves in battle. Through the great windows, they could see figures moving in the courtyard. Rogues, the same desperate wolves who had attacked the conciliation ceremony. But these weren't random attacks. As the hall's occupants rushed to the windows, they could see the strategic nature of the assault. Groups of rogues moved with military precision, targeting specific buildings, cutting off escape routes. This was Gage's final contingency: chaos to cover the escape of his remaining conspirators. He planned for this, Nikolai said grimly, his hand already reaching for his weapon. Even in death, he's trying to destroy what we've built. The attack forced an immediate choice. Cassandra could barricade the hall, protect the elders and witnesses while others fought the rogues. She could maintain the careful political balance, avoid the risk of appearing weak or reckless. Or she could do what her wolf demanded: lead from the front, fight beside her people, prove through action rather than words. Mira, escort the elders to the secure chambers, Cassandra commanded, her voice carrying absolute authority. Rowan, coordinate with the Frostfall warriors. Everyone else, we defend our home. The transformation came without conscious thought. Her human form dissolved as bones lengthened and muscles expanded, dark fur sprouting across her changing frame. Beside her, Nikolai shifted as well, his massive silver-black wolf radiating deadly purpose. For the first time since the bond manifested, they moved together without reservation or doubt. The battle in the courtyard was fierce but brief. These rogues were better trained than the desperate wolves from the ceremony, clearly prepared and equipped by Gage's network. But they faced not just individual defenders. They faced 2 packs fighting as one, their alphas leading with synchronized precision that spoke to bonds deeper than politics or tradition. Cassandra's wolf was smaller than Nikolai's, but no less deadly. She moved like liquid shadow, finding throats with surgical accuracy while her mate provided the crushing power that scattered enemy formations. Together they carved through the rogue lines like a force of nature, their pack members rallying behind their combined strength. But victory came at a cost. 3 Winterstone wolves lay dead, including old Marcus, who had stood with Cassandra from the beginning. 5 Frostfall warriors were badly wounded, and the carefully neutral witnesses had seen both packs at their most primal, most violent. Blood stained the ancient stones, mixing pack scents in ways that would take seasons to fade. As the surviving rogues fled into the forest, both packs began the grim work of caring for their wounded and honoring their dead. In the aftermath, with adrenaline fading and grief settling in, the political reality reasserted itself. They had fought together, bled together, but what did that mean for the future? Eliana emerged from the secure chambers, her ancient eyes bright with something that might have been satisfaction. The spirits speak through action as well as words, she observed, surveying the blood-stained courtyard. Tonight, they spoke clearly, but Darius wasn't ready to concede. Violence doesn't excuse the breaking of natural law, he insisted, though his voice lacked its earlier certainty. A female alpha bonded to our former enemy. Our current ally, Nikolai interrupted firmly. Gage is dead. His conspiracy is broken. The threat came from within, not from pack divisions. The debate that followed was intense, but different from the earlier arguments. Wolves who had seen their alphas fight together found it harder to question the bond's validity. Young warriors who had bled beside former enemies struggled to maintain old hatred. The evidence of cooperation, written in shared sacrifice, carried more weight than ancient texts or traditional fears. Still, unity wasn't unanimous. Several Winterstone elders declared they would never accept Frostfall wolves as allies, bond or no bond. 3 Frostfall warriors requested transfers to distant packs rather than serve under an alpha who had chosen a female mate. The divisions were real, potentially permanent. Then let them go, Cassandra said quietly when the extent of opposition became clear. I won't force loyalty through fear or tradition. But I won't abandon what the moon has given us either. The formal decision came after hours of debate, testimony, and careful political maneuvering. The neutral witnesses agreed that the mate bond appeared genuine, that Gage's betrayal absolved both current alphas of blame, and that the combined packs had fought effectively together. But they also acknowledged the unprecedented nature of the situation and the need for careful transition. A provisional alliance was established. Not full merger, but coordinated leadership with shared territories and mutual defense agreements. Cassandra would remain Alpha of Winterstone, Nikolai of Frostfall, but they would rule as bonded mates with equal authority in joint matters. The arrangement satisfied neither traditionalists nor revolutionaries, but it offered stability, while emotions settled and new patterns emerged. As dawn broke over the blood-stained courtyard, Cassandra stood beside Nikolai, both still bearing wounds from the night's battle. The mate bond hummed between them. No longer a source of conflict, but not yet fully accepted either. They had survived the immediate crisis. But the real work of building something new was just beginning. Mira approached her mother, exhaustion and grief warring with cautious hope in her young face. "What happens now?" she asked quietly. Cassandra looked out over the assembled wolves, some supportive, some skeptical, all waiting to see what shape the future would take. "Now we prove that strength comes from unity, not division," she said. "We show them that two packs can become something greater than the sum of their parts." The challenges ahead would be enormous. Integrating two different cultures, establishing new traditions, earning trust from wolves raised to see each other as enemies or rivals. But as Nikolai's hand found hers, as the mate bond settled into something warm and steady rather than desperate and painful, Cassandra felt ready to face whatever came next. The trial by fire was over. The harder test, building a lasting peace, was about to begin. Chapter 8. New moon rising. 6 months had passed since the blood-soaked night that changed everything. The ancient stones of Winterstone's great hall bore new carvings now. Symbols representing the union of two packs, the strength found in unexpected bonds, and the courage to forge new paths from old sorrows. Cassandra ran her fingers over the fresh etchings, marveling at how much had changed since that first terrible night of loss and betrayal. At 32, she felt the weight of leadership differently now. No longer the burden of proving herself worthy, but the deeper responsibility of building something that had never existed before. The provisional alliance had evolved into something stronger, more permanent. Not just a political arrangement, but a genuine melding of two cultures into something new. "The autumn hunt preparations are complete," Nikolai reported, entering the hall with maps and tallies in his weathered hands. At 36, he moved with the confident grace of an alpha, who had found his perfect partner. His mate bond no longer a source of conflict, but a wellspring of strength. "Both packs will participate together for the first time." Cassandra smiled, feeling the warm pulse of their connection. The mate bond had settled into comfortable familiarity, not the desperate, overwhelming pull of those first weeks, but a steady presence that enhanced rather than dominated their individual strength. They could work separately for days now without physical pain, but chose to stay close because partnership felt natural, right? "Mira's excited about leading her first mixed hunting party," Cassandra said, nodding toward the training grounds where their combined young wolves practiced together. "She's been working with Pavel's son to coordinate the new formations." The sight through the windows was one that would have been unthinkable a year ago. Winterstone and Frostfall wolves training side by side, learning each other's techniques, building bonds that transcended old territorial divisions. Mira, now 18 and showing every sign of her mother's natural leadership, moved between both groups with easy authority. Not everything had been smooth, of course. 3 major challenges to their joint authority had emerged over the months, including one attempted coup by Lydia's nephew, who believed traditional hierarchy should be restored. Each conflict had been resolved through strength and wisdom combined, sometimes through formal combat, more often through patient demonstration of effective leadership. "The Southern Territories have requested a formal meeting," Nikolai continued, spreading his maps on the ancient oak table. "They want to understand our alliance structure before committing to trade agreements." Cassandra studied the territorial markings, noting how their combined influence had grown. What had started as a desperate attempt to prevent war had become a new model of pack governance, one that other alphas were beginning to study, and in some cases, emulate. "Let them come," she decided. "We have nothing to hide. Our success speaks for itself," and it did speak. The combined territories had seen unprecedented prosperity over the past months. Shared hunting grounds provided more abundant prey. Combined defenses had deterred 3 potential rogue incursions without a single casualty. The integration of Frostfall's military precision with Winterstone's diplomatic finesse had created something more formidable than either pack had been alone, but perhaps more importantly, they had created new traditions that honored both their past and their future. The Bonding Moon ceremony, celebrated monthly to strengthen pack unity, drew from both territorial customs, while adding elements unique to their merged culture. Young wolves learned histories from both packs, understanding that strength came from diversity rather than rigid conformity. Eliana shuffled into the hall, her ancient frame still spry despite her advanced years. The old seer had become something of a prophet to the younger generation, her early support for the mate bond now seen as evidence of supernatural wisdom. "The spirits are pleased," she announced with satisfaction, settling into her customary chair by the great hearth. "The nightmares have ceased. The shadow dreams that plagued both territories for so long have finally lifted." Cassandra nodded, understanding the deeper meaning. The unrest that had made their lands vulnerable to Gage's manipulation was truly gone, replaced by the stability that came from unified purpose. Wolves slept peacefully now, no longer haunted by ancestral fears or territorial anxieties. "Speaking of the future," Nikolai said, his voice carrying a warmth that made their bond hum with anticipation, "we should discuss the proposal from the Eastern Council." The Eastern Council's invitation was significant, a chance to represent their alliance at the Grand Conclave, where territorial law was debated and shaped. Never before had a bonded pair been invited to participate as co-equals. Their acceptance would establish precedent that could influence pack governance across the continent. "Are we ready for that level of scrutiny?" Cassandra asked, though she already knew her own answer. "They'll question everything, our bond, our authority, our right to speak for combined territories." "Let them question," Nikolai replied, his storm-gray eyes blazing with quiet confidence. "We'll answer with actions, not words. Show them what unity can accomplish." A commotion in the courtyard drew their attention. Through the great windows, they could see a delegation arriving, unfamiliar banners, travel-worn wolves moving with the careful diplomacy of envoys bearing important news. But these weren't the expected southern territories. Mountain packs, Eliana identified, her enhanced senses picking up scent markers the others couldn't detect. From the high peaks, where the ancient bloodlines run strongest, the delegation was small but impressive. 5 wolves in ceremonial traveling cloaks, led by an elderly female whose silver hair and regal bearing marked her as high-ranking. They approached the hall with formal protocol, but Cassandra could sense underlying urgency in their movements. "Alpha Cassandra, Alpha Nikolai," the silver-haired leader began once introductions were complete. "I am Vera Stormwright of the High Peak Alliance. We come seeking guidance and alliance." The request that followed was unprecedented. 7 mountain packs, traditionally the most isolated and conservative of all shifter communities, faced a crisis that threatened their existence. Rogue armies, far more organized than any seen before, were systematically attacking mountain territories. The conservative leadership that had sustained them for centuries was proving inadequate against modern threats. "They've heard of your success," Vera explained, her aged eyes focusing intently on both alphas. "A male and female leading together. Traditions evolving rather than breaking. Strength through unity rather than dominance. The mountain clans debate whether such changes could save them. The implications were staggering. If the mountain packs, the most traditional shifter communities, embraced the alliance model, it could transform supernatural society across entire continents. But it would also bring new responsibilities, new challenges, and new enemies who saw change as threat. "We would need to see the situation firsthand," Cassandra said carefully. "Understand the specific threats, meet with your people, assess whether our model could work in your territories. And we would need guarantees," Nikolai added. "Not just of welcome, but of genuine commitment to change. Unity requires sacrifice from all parties." Vera nodded gravely. "We understand. Change is never easy, especially for those who have relied on unchanging ways for so long. But survival sometimes demands the impossible. As the mountain delegation was escorted to guest quarters for the night, Cassandra and Nikolai stood together in the great hall, feeling the weight of new possibilities settling around them like a mantle. "Are we ready to become more than just ourselves?" Cassandra asked quietly. "To represent not just our own packs, but a new way of existence?" Nikolai's hand found hers, their fingers intertwining as naturally as breathing. Through their bond flowed not just love and partnership, but shared purpose and unshakable resolve. "We were forged in fire," he replied, his voice steady with conviction. "Tested by betrayal, proven in battle, tempered by loss and victory both. If anyone is ready to lead change, it's us." Outside, the moon rose full and bright over territories that had learned to see strength in unity, wisdom in adaptation, hope in the courage to choose love over fear. The future stretched ahead, uncertain, but no longer terrifying. In the months and years to come, the alliance of Winterstone and Frostfall would face new challenges, welcome new allies, and continue building something that had never existed before. A model of shifter society based on partnership rather than domination, growth rather than stagnation, hope rather than fear. But tonight, they were simply two mates who had found each other against impossible odds, leading their people toward a dawn that promised to be brighter than any they had known before. The old world was ending. The new world was just beginning. The alliance between Winterstone and Frostfall is just one story among many. Across the supernatural world, countless wolves fight similar battles, defying traditions, discovering unexpected mates, choosing love over ancient rivalries. These tales of forbidden bonds are waiting to be told. If this journey of enemies becoming lovers touched your heart, we have passionate stories waiting. Rival alphas finding their destined mates, second chances that defy fate, love conquering the impossible. Hit subscribe to join our storytelling pack and never miss our next adventure. Thank you for experiencing Cassandra and Nikolai's story tonight. Until we meet again.